whether it has started or not. Let's see. And I'm seeing something on LinkedIn now. Perfect. Cool. We're live. Good to see everybody. Today is a very narrow session, you can say. If you don't like LinkedIn ads, then it's probably the wrong live to join. But I do like LinkedIn ads, and it's something we use at Dream Data every day. I think it's the channel where we spend the most now, which is new for me. But I really, really like LinkedIn's ad platform. And today I've invited one of those guys that I send some DMs once in a while when I'm a little bit lost or have a question about LinkedIn that I don't get. And that's you, Gabriel. So thank you so much for taking the time to join in here.
It's my pleasure.
Cool. And like for those who don't know you, maybe you can just do the quickest of introduction of yourself and the agency which you founded as well.
Sure. So my name is Gabriel Ehrlich. I'm the founder and CEO of an agency called Remotion. Remotion is a LinkedIn ads agency. I started the company about 6 years ago, really, really early on into, after LinkedIn ads had kind of rolled out their self-serve product. We're based out of Tel Aviv, so there's a really strong B2B tech sector here. And kind of with a few strokes of luck and good fortune, I had the ability to work with some pretty incredible marketing teams at some pretty incredible unicorns and companies that weren't unicorns yet, but became unicorns. And so I really was able to kind of cut my teeth on LinkedIn, way before you had lead gen forms, before you had retargeting, before you had all this cool stuff that you have now, you didn't have. It was really simple. And I just got a lot of experience on it. And so was able to get a bunch of great clients pretty early on. And then about 3 years ago, decided to turn that one-man show into an agency. Right now, we're about 12 people. We manage about $2 million a month in LinkedIn ad spend. We have about 30 some odd clients. Mostly in Israel, but quite a few in Europe, quite a few in the United States, and even one in India. Hi guys, if you want.
Yeah. Super nice, Gabriel, and it'd be nice to hear just a quick tour through the history of LinkedIn ads, maybe in a little while. But for you guys who are listening, just treat it as an ask us anything session. So if you are using LinkedIn ads and you have a very specific question, just write it in the chat and we'll pick it up as we go along. Otherwise, me and Gabriel will just go through a conversation about LinkedIn ads and what the questions I've prepared as myself for my own usage. But Gabriel will also go through kind of the best practices they see at Remotion as well. But Gabriel, let's just warm up a little bit. What's been the evolution the last 6 years in like a few short steps with LinkedIn ads?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's gotten more expensive. I think that when I first started, the average cost per click was around $10. Now I would say it's closer to $20. If we're talking about tier 1 markets, before, when I first started, there were no lead gen forms. There was no pixel. There was no retargeting pixel or conversion pixel. None of that existed. And so it was really, really hard to kind of get attribution in there. But we did. And we saw some really interesting stuff, but it was also less competitive, less expensive. And results it was easier to come by results earlier on. And it's become harder. And now, I think we've been able to kind of correct for that with the lead gen form. So I think you could plot an XY axis with conversion rates kind of going down year over year. And that's not just with LinkedIn. Conversion rates just going down year over year in general. But then when they introduced the lead gen form, they're able to kind of buy that back. And I think that if they hadn't done that, it would have been really, really, really hard for a lot of companies to show any sort of value from LinkedIn ads, even if it wasn't there. It's just hard to prove it.
I think this is like there's a marketing lesson in itself. The prices just go up year on year because competition strengthens.
Yeah.
So if you have something, if you have campaigns where you're happy about the result, you need to spend more money right now because in the future the math is going to break.
Yeah, and I mean, LinkedIn itself has grown. Like I really experienced that over the last 2 or 3 years as, not just a LinkedIn advertiser, but as a LinkedIn, contributor, a creator, and somebody who writes a lot, and you write a lot as well. I felt that there's just a lot more. A lot people are on LinkedIn more. I think people have kind of stopped. They're spending less time on Facebook, a little bit more time on LinkedIn. More people, more countries. So that's pretty cool. So the audience has expanded there as well.
Yeah.
And the product itself has matured in an interesting way. It's still not perfect. Nothing is, right? And it's far from as advanced as some of their competitors, but it's come a long way. And I think we can give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. If we start out, like, who would you say LinkedIn ads is for, and who should not think about it as a good place to put some of their dollars?
So I have a few opinions here. I would say number one, if you are in B2B in any way, you should be on LinkedIn ads in some way, right? So if you have a B2B audience in any sort of capacity, I think it makes sense to do something on LinkedIn ads, even if it's just retargeting, even if it's just throwing a few $100, a few $1,000. I would make sure I'm there in some way. But I think who we've seen is able to be the most successful on LinkedIn ads. I mean, at Remotion, we focus on B2B tech companies and companies that have kind of sales-driven motions versus more product-led. You mentioned that before, and I'll reiterate that. It has to be, your ACV has to be high enough to afford it. So like if you're selling, I don't know, $100 a month subscription software, or I don't know, something like that, it's very, very unlikely. If you can't get a deal for, I don't know, $20,000 a year, give or take, or above, it might be harder. Let's say I would say the cutoff would be like 15K, 10K maybe being the absolute minimum. It's going to be really, really hard for it to be ROI positive if that is what you are looking for. And that's where my big caveat is, not everything needs to be ROI positive. And I know that kind of goes against a lot of performance marketing religion, but sometimes just getting in front of your audience consistently, day in, day out, year in, year out, even if you can't necessarily say, oh yeah, we got all those clicks and all those clicks turned into leads and all those leads turned into opportunities, even if you can't necessarily measure that, there is absolutely value in getting in front of your audience day in, day out with your message, whether or not you can prove it or not.
I think that has been my experience with LinkedIn as well, that I've been very so focused on getting that click so I could measure what happened afterwards. But what was it? December last year we started doing these matched audiences on LinkedIn, where you could select who are the companies that sees your ad. And we didn't want to do stuff that way forced people to click. We wanted our message in front of the right people at the right companies. So what we could in our own software could see was that, yes, there was some direct attribution spillover where somebody clicked, signed up to a form, and then went into the sales pipeline. But the bigger lift seemed to come from people Googling organically and people coming directly to our website afterwards. And we're 30 people, so we're not a huge company. So it's easier to correlate kind of what was the difference in our go-to-market. Okay, we started this spend, then it must probably be that spend. If you're a huge company, then you have many activities and it can be harder to tell. But that was my own kind of, it's not about getting the click necessarily. It's about getting in front of the right people, and then they will come to you once they're ready to talk.
Yeah, and I've come around in a big way around that. Like I got my start in marketing in performance marketing and PPC and, really, really like performance driven environments. And the more I'm in this, in this area, and the more I'm running marketing for myself and I'm learning over time, I'm getting a lot less interested in that. Like I don't, when I'm running ads for Remotion, I don't care what my cost per lead is. I know, because I don't have, again, like I'm small. So I know every single lead that comes in, and I know if I'm running a campaign targeting cybersecurity companies in Europe, and I'm starting to see a few leads coming in here and there from cybersecurity companies in Europe, and they're referencing the ad in the sign up form, then that's it. And I'm not spending $100,000 a month, and a good deal for us can be, $100,000 lifetime value. So I don't really care. Like I know it's actually going to be ROI positive. I know it. I don't have to. Yeah. I don't care. And so that's sort of when I'm doing it for myself. Now, as an agency, we can't really do that for our clients. We have to prove our value. So we're a little bit more inclined to, to do that attribution stuff and actually show, this campaign brought in this much pipeline, or this campaign brought this many SQLs or something like that. But as much as possible, trying to, tie it to revenue. But I'm also trying to educate our customers on the fact that, a lot of value here is coming from people Googling, and a lot of value is going to be coming from actually people learning about your company over time. They might not need what you do right now, right? So, if I'm a up and coming B2B tech company, I think you and I have probably similar ICP. They might not need LinkedIn ads right now. They might say, hey, I don't have budget for this right now, but I might be getting in front of them day in, day out. And then when they do, they're like, what's the name of that LinkedIn ads company that I keep seeing their ad for? Oh yeah, Remotion. Hey, new marketing guy, go please Google Remotion. I'd love to have a call with them. And this is kind of, people are writing about this, people are talking about this all the time. I think it's becoming more and more clear that this is how things actually work. But this is how advertising works, and this is how.
But I think we should put in a disclaimer here that it's this is just our opinion, and you really like this is the overall strokes. But of course, you follow everything as granular as you can, and you say this out of years of gut feeling and experience, and the ads is targeting exactly the right people. So you cannot just like do these things blindfolded. Obviously there's directional things that you need to check in.
100%. And we look at, when we're running our campaign, I can, because it's my money and it's my business, I can kind of like do that like that. But when we're running, campaigns for our clients, we would never do that on one hand. On the other hand, we're trying to kind of complement it. We're trying to come and say, look, this is what we can measure. This is what we're seeing. This is what, this is what's happening in terms of the things that we're measuring, right? And we can kind of track. What I like to say there is, don't look at that as the absolute truth. Look at that as an indicator, right? So if your graph is going like this, and that's a good thing, then keep doing that. But that doesn't mean that if it's telling you that your cost per opportunity is $10,000, it's not. It might be $5,000. It might be $2,500, and it might be even less. You don't know, and it's important to kind of have that humility when coming into it and saying, well, there's a bunch of stuff here that you can't know for sure, and you can get, you can come up with models, and if you really, really want to, you can kind of try to, but you should also just assume that there's more than meets the eye.
Yeah, especially the way I think about it is,
especially if you're getting good feedback. Especially if people are saying, "I saw your ad." Especially if your things are looking generally good, and you're getting in front of your audience, and they're responding to the ads, and they're signing up, and you're getting some like meetings and deals from that. You can assume there's more of that there. You just don't know about.
Yeah, I normally run by if you're in doubt whether things are working or not, and you cannot find any proof, it's not working. So that's why you need that. You need the kind of link. Something is coming through the specific campaign, but you can also assume that it's not capturing the full value creation of the campaign.
100%. There are heuristics. There are signals that every campaign kind of throws off that it's good, you know? And yeah, you can look at things like CTR, you look at things like likes on the post, you can look at things that like comments on the post. You know, sometimes I'll run an ad and then within hours, people are commenting on the ad saying it's funny. Like that's a win. I don't care if I got leads, that's a win. You know, if I made my audience laugh, that's a win.
Absolutely. Can you say, I would love to hear if there is such a thing as a silver bullet or like golden tactic for LinkedIn. What would the 1, 2, 3 things you would say that you at least should consider to be, if you want to be successful on LinkedIn?
Okay. So number one, you got to make sure that you can afford it. I think that you want to have enough budget. Bear in mind the LinkedIn ads is expensive. So, you know, when we talk to clients, we prefer if they're spending at least $15,000 a month, which is like $500 a day, which gives you enough room to test, right? Now, if I'm doing it for myself and I have the patience, I might be spending less, or if you're doing it in-house, you might want to, you know, do less, but I would make sure that you have the budget or the time to invest in it. That's number one. Number two, is your audience targetable, right? So if your audience is, I don't know, people who are, I had one once that was just like impossible. I get these weird ones. I'm having a brain blank here, but sometimes we get companies where they can only sell to companies that have, I don't know, a certain criteria that just doesn't exist as something that is targetable, and you would never really even be able to do a list like that and just forget about it. Or there's only, I don't know, 50 companies in the world that they could sell to. I don't know. Business to government stuff is kind of tough in that sense. You know, does it make sense for you? You know, is there any scale here? Is there any meat on the bones? Is it targetable? That's number one. And now I'm going to kind of get specific here. If you're running lead generation campaigns for a sales-driven motion where the goal is to get leads and then have your SDRs reach out, book a meeting, show a demo, then you want to make sure that you have all the stuff, right? And all the stuff, all the infrastructure. You want to make sure that you have content that you can run. You want to make sure that you have creative that you can test out. You want to make sure that you have SDRs that's going to be reaching out to the leads. If it's, you know, the CEO or salespeople, it's not impossible, but it's going to make things more difficult, and it kind of increases the risk that it's not going to run. You want to make sure that once the lead is coming in, somebody's reaching out to this person as soon as possible while it's still top of mind. For every half an hour or hour that the lead has to wait, the chances that they're going to reply to you go down. And because it's not high intent. This isn't Google search. This isn't referral. This is paid social. So they saw an ad. They thought it was cool. They thought it was funny. They thought it was interesting. They either signed up through a lead gen form or even through your website, but they don't necessarily have this like, you know, mission right now to get an analytics software or a B2B agency. They might say, oh, and you also have to, you have to communicate internally that the leads that you're going to get here are not the same as the leads that you are getting through the website, through referrals, through search. They're not going to be as interested. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and that is how you grow. You can't just grow from hard buyers. You're gonna, you know, there's demand in the market. Some of that demand you're going to capture, and that's great. But you can't that's going to limit your growth if you only go to those. You have to go to casual buyers. You have to go to people who are like, yeah, maybe I actually was thinking about doing something like that. And you're going to have to work harder for that. Your SDR is going to have to spend a little bit more for that. You're going to have to work harder for it. But if you close it, that's like a whole other branch on your tree of growth. Maybe it expands to another region or another territory, or it opens up new doors or another network. Because that's how companies grow.
I think just if I reference how we've only done it the last year or so with LinkedIn ads, and I started out offering on a demo on the first message, and well, somebody who doesn't know about us, they don't want to take a demo straight away.
Yeah.
And then I pivoted to the complete opposite. So I made a very light ebook, something about B2B,
The ultimate guide to
yeah, blah, yeah. And what I found out there is that there's also a long way from getting somebody to download an ebook just to get them to take a demo, and not even speaking about the sales pipeline.
yeah.
And then at last, I kind of, I don't know if I want to say gave up, but I just thought, okay, let me just create some nice content, put in front of them, and then trust that they will come to us afterwards. So I think, yeah, just getting the lead, I think is really important, Gabriel. That's just not enough. You need like SDRs, you need people calling them, you need an automated flow of mails and stuff like that as well.
And it helps to have, product market fit. It helps to know what your positioning is and what your messaging is. You absolutely have to have a marketing attribution, and I highly recommend HubSpot more than anything else there. If you're using Marketo, if you're using something else, stop. There's no reason to do
Except
that.
if it's stream data, then continue.
Yeah, but it's not marketing attribution. You guys do? Sorry, I said attribution. I meant automation, marketing automation.
Approved.
Yeah.
Approved.
So you want to make sure you have something like HubSpot where you're doing, where you actually, that's where you're collecting leads, and you want to make sure you have a good way to actually collect all the leads. And you want to make sure that you have these different things that you can test out a demo request campaign, you can test out content. Now, one of the things that I've learned over doing this for years and years and years with many different types of companies in many different industries, even if it's all B2B tech, it really runs the gamut between a small company that's targeting maybe smaller companies, even with a large deal size, or enterprise company. There's so many different things and so many different behaviors. So I really have to say here, there is no one size fits all. Absolutely not. And so everything that can work. So we've seen very direct on a cold audience, a demo request campaign, come in, get super cheap leads. They're able to get them on calls and close deals within like a 15-day time frame. Now, these are not huge deals, not 20K, but the conversion rate is so high that it doesn't matter. And so, and for whatever reason, they're able to get really, really cheap leads. Now, maybe it's the strong product market fit. There's some industries that are less competitive than other industries. You're targeting marketers in tech. I'm targeting marketers in tech. This is saturated as hell. You've seen that big chart with MarTech. Now, if you're going after dentists on LinkedIn, I can promise you that, I don't know if I can promise you, but I'm pretty confident that you can probably get people to sign up for a demo for pretty cheap, and you can probably get them on that demo for pretty cheap, because not a lot of people are going after dentists on LinkedIn. Some people are, but probably not a lot. There's a long tail here. So I worked once with a company that does software for like HVAC, like heating and cooling, and for big facilities. And they had this sort of automated solution that tells you when there's a failure there. And so we were targeting people who manage buildings and facilities and heating and cooling for factories and stuff like that. And it was crazy how well this worked, and the cost was so much lower than you'd expect. And so, to anybody who's listening to this, the more niche your industry is, it's actually more likely that some of these like old school aggressive tactics are going to work really, really well. And the more sophisticated your audience is, the more sophisticated you have to be. It's kind of like an arms race. So going after B2B tech marketers, yes, you have to be a little bit more sophisticated than an ebook or a download.
Super nice. So we got a question here now, which actually leads into what I prepared as well. So I'll just read it out loud. Which medium do you find works well? Meaning pictures, videos, no graphics at all. And just to show that I actually prepped a little bit, I'll pull up this one. So this is, Gabriel, you'll know this, but this is essentially the ad formats that you can choose when you're setting up a LinkedIn ad. Is there any kind of overall ways people should be thinking about these?
Yeah, I mean, well, I can tell you what we do for our clients and what we do for ourselves. I would say that 90% of what we run is a single image ad with a lead gen form, or a video ad with a lead gen form. And it kind of depends if you have good videos or not. But yeah, for the most part, it's going to be single image with a lead gen form.
Okay.
And we'll do that usually for ourselves or for our clients with or without lead gen form.
Is that like
Now,
experience based that kind of works best?
it's a combination of, hey, this is tried and true, this works, and it's easy, right? Like it's easier to get an image than it is to, and you kind of have to think about that when you're thinking about running this long term, because resources are limited, whether that is time, money, people's attention. So if you're running your strategy, your tactics based on video, cool, and that might be really great, but that means you have to keep getting new videos all the time, and it's just more expensive to get good video than it is to get a good image.
True.
That's number one. Number two is I'm very, very adamant about doing everything eventually. So if we're at a stage with our client where we have scaled up, that things are working well, that we know their audience, that we know we kind of know the messaging, this is when I'm going to kind of venture out and try some of these other things, especially for retargeting. And so I want to be very clear on that. Like, if you have a good retargeting audience, whether from your website or you can retarget based on website. And by the way, for anybody listening, make sure that you're adding job titles and industry. Like, make sure you're adding a filter of your ICP to retargeting, so that you're filtering out vendors and maybe people who are looking to work for you, or your buddy's mom that checked you out.
So actually, I have it right here. This one. Yeah, so that's this. You can basically select which countries are good, which countries do you want to exclude. So
always remove audience expansion. Always uncheck audience expansion. Always.
And then, if you can also make an offline list of your customers where you can kind of exclude them from the retargeting as well.
Cool. So I just wanted to add to what I was saying about the ad formats. If I have a good targeting audience, and you can do it based on people who visited your website, but also people who visited your company page, people who've engaged with your ads, who've clicked on your ads, who've opened your lead gen forms, who've watched a percentage of your video. So what you're doing is you're targeting your cold audience, and you're starting to create a layer of a warm audience, people who have seen you once, clicked on you once. You're starting to warm these guys up, and that shouldn't be very large. Generally speaking, you're probably going to get in the vicinity of a few thousand, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And it's really, really cheap to reach these guys a lot with all of these other formats. So text ads is not necessarily a great format for performance, but it's a really, really great format for reach. It's super cheap, and you're only charging people click. And so you can get your logo in front of your retargeting audience pretty much every single day for dollars, really, for like $10, $20.
I can testify that as well.
I know.
Actually, I started hating it because the click price is so high. You also get a shitload of impressions for practically nothing.
If you believe it's a good thing to stay top of mind, to have your logo be seen by your audience often, then it's great, and it's just super, super, super cheap. But some of these other stuff as well, message ads, conversational ads, all this other stuff, it's relatively cheap on a retargeting audience to just use these. And then those other formats are underutilized for the most part. And so you can kind of just make it so that you're meeting your potential client, or your potential customer, or your lead. You're meeting your audience in various formats, and that helps in terms of building those memories. In terms of cool, they're seeing the ad, they're seeing the ad. Oh, now we're seeing the text ad. Now we're seeing a video. Now we're seeing something else, and you can kind of flesh out those conversations there.
Yeah. So Monica is actually asking. Monica had a question here. I'll read it out loud. So, any specific tips for using lead gen forms? We just started implementing them. We did notice at first a lot of personal emails. So, at least added work email after a quick learning there. What's your view on
So
this,
this is
Gabriel?
a
Then
question
I'll
we get a
contribute
lot.
afterwards.
It's a
Keep it up.
question we get a lot. So the lead gen forms are a blessing and a curse. If you are focused on getting leads and you are focused on getting leads at a decent cost per lead, you really have to be using lead gen forms. The problem with the lead gen forms is that they are pre-populated with, and you can use the work field, but still most people don't have their work emails integrated into LinkedIn, set up on LinkedIn. And so you're going to get a lot of personal emails. Don't worry about it. I check my personal email. You check your personal email. You can get through. But I'll even go further than that. If you are only reaching out to your leads via email, you're missing out. Reach out to your leads on LinkedIn. When I run lead gen forms, I don't even ask for email. You know what I ask for? I just ask for their name and their LinkedIn profile. You know why? Because everything else I care about is on their LinkedIn profile and you can message them. So they've indicated that they're interested and you've made it super, super easy for them to say, okay, cool, I'm not actually giving you any personal information. I'm just raising my hand here to learn more. What's the difference? Honestly, what is the difference between getting their email address and a LinkedIn email? I guarantee you it's more likely that they're going to see that LinkedIn email than, you don't have to worry about the spam filters. You don't have to worry about them, whether it's personal or not. They're getting there. And you know what? You know that they're on LinkedIn because they just saw your ad. And so that's what I'm doing. But even if you're getting the emails and you're asking SDRs to reach out on email, that's fine. Yes, people will respond to their personal emails a little bit less, but it's not so much that you should try to force them to, unless some people do that, force them to put in their work email. Don't worry about that. And if you are really, 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 really need those work emails, you can use lead enrichment data like Zoom Info or something like that, or Clearbit, and you can get those work emails, and there you go.
Yeah. Maybe I guess people also create their LinkedIn profile mainly with their private email, so they're more prone to have that in the system. Just for a rule of thumb for people, what is a decent cost per lead on LinkedIn in your opinion?
So obviously it depends as for all things, but I would say that a decent cost per lead for, say, a demo request lead would be about $300. Okay, that would be decent, and it might be
demo request.
Yeah,
demo request. Okay, so that's a pretty good intent then for it.
Yeah, I mean it's. So I'll give you my benchmarks, and these might have changed since the last time I checked them, but here are my benchmarks. My benchmarks are for a demo request lead, it should be in the area of about $300. Maybe a little bit less if you're lucky, maybe a little bit more if you're not. If it's usually if it's a lot more than that, there's either a problem with your targeting, or there's a problem with your messaging, or you have a bigger problem than you realize. If it's much more, because if everything is right in terms of your messaging and your creative and your targeting, and and it's still much higher than $300 for a demo request lead, you have a problem, because your market is not as interested in what you're talking about as you thought.
And then what about an ebook?
Yeah, so for ebooks, it should be about $100. Again, could be anywhere between $25 and up to maybe $200. But I would say that we usually see them in the vicinity of about $100. 75 is kind of a good place to strive for. But if we can get to $100, we're happy. Now, the other benchmark that's important to remember here is lead to meeting ratio. And so it pretty much correlates. So we usually see there's a 1-to-3 ratio between demo request and content in terms of cost, and that works in reverse in terms of lead to meeting ratio. So, if you can get 15% from lead to demo for a lead gen form demo request lead, that's good. And if you can get it for those content guys coming in at about 5%, that's good. And I would say, and it's never that straightforward. And we'll have clients where it's 20% for the demo request and it's 2% for the content, or we'll see that it's higher than usual for the content and lower than usual for the demo. And we've seen all sorts of variations there, but kind of on the average, it clusters around those numbers.
It's so important to follow these things, because though we might create this huge list of leads, like we haven't made any money for the company before you get contracts signed. So never ever stop at the lead collection. You need to follow through. Do you get demo calls booked? Do you get sales meetings? Do you get sales pipeline, etc.?
Yeah. And I would say that the two biggest issues, and I think you solved one of them, but the two biggest issues that we see that companies struggle with when it comes to LinkedIn ads, because once you've figured out the audience, once you've figured out creative and messaging, you're going to get leads, and you can probably get leads at a decent cost. But the biggest thing the company struggles with is what happens after the lead comes in, how are they handled, and how, are we able to turn them into a meeting or an opportunity? And all of that sort of dark funnel attribution stuff, or the ABM attribution stuff, or some of the stuff that you solve in terms of tracking the whole funnel. So I would say that those are the two biggest issues that kind of where things fail, that are not directly, it's not something that you can actually fix in LinkedIn. And a lot of companies try to fix that. They're like, they'll come and they'll say, oh, our nobody is responding to our outreach from all these leads that you got. They're ignoring our sales guys, and we haven't been able to book any meetings for them. And we'll dig around, we'll find out that the outreach emails were terrible. We're just awful, and nobody would reply to those. And you and I wouldn't reply to those. And so this is the thing where it's sort of like you can't solve that on the ad. The ads are working. They're bringing in, they're getting in front of the right people. They're engaging at a good rate. Somebody here asked about a good CTR. I would say that 0.5% is normal. Above 1% is fantastic. So if you can kind of work within that range, like anything less than 0.5% is a bad indicator. Between 0.5% and 1%. This is for single image lead gen form companies.
I was about to say that also depends on the medium that you're running. Gabriel, we have to kind of stop soon, but there's one thing I wanted to ask you as well, which is this kind of, not this one, this one. So the first thing you said when you create an ad, you get presented with these objectives. What's the most important thing to be aware about when the consequences of clicking one of these?
Sure. So basically, these tell the algorithm to do different things. And basically, some will optimize for, say, clicks, some will optimize for reach, and some will optimize for frequency, for example. So if you, and this is, it's not that important, it's kind of important, but it's a little advanced. But if, say, let's say you're working with a relatively large list, and you don't have a very high budget, and you have a video, and it's important that as many people as possible see the video, for example, within your ICP, and it's more important to you that as many people see the video as possible than it is for you to get clicks or leads or anything like that. Then you're going to want to go to something like brand awareness or video views, and you're going to want to make sure that you are optimizing for reach. Lead generation, we'll make it a lead gen form ad, and website conversions, we'll try to optimize for website conversions. I generally don't recommend that. That's going to be asking the algorithm to do something that it doesn't necessarily have any business doing. And I would do, generally for most campaigns, you're good with either running website clicks if it's going to the website or a landing page, or lead gen if you use lead gen form. For 9 times out of 10, that's what you should be doing. And if you're doing something that's more in the vicinity of brand awareness, or just trying to kind of set, you're trying to optimize for reach or something like that, and you don't want to have a frequency of, say, 20, and maybe you have a really small audience, then you might want to choose something else there and make sure that you're optimizing for reach.
So like if the list is super small, you just want to tell it, get anybody who can watch this ad to watch.
If there's an option, I want to bid. That you have to kind of, and there are resources about that. You can probably explain it better than I do, but it's beneficial to understand how the auction works here, and understand basically how the bidding works. and understand how that would relate to your audience, right? So if you have a large audience and you have a small budget, that's, you need to think about how you stretch that dollar and how you get to as many people as possible. But if you have a very, very small audience and you have money, then you actually have to think about how can I outbid everybody? How can I make sure that I'm always showing up? And you have to think about basically how do you take all the inventory that you possibly can from this limited audience. If you have, I don't know, 4,000 people, that's it. There's nothing more than that. How do you make sure you get one? And these are totally different tactics that you're going to want to employ. And sorry, go ahead.
This is actually a question I've been asking myself several times as I set up audiences. So once you define all these things, countries, list, exclusions, etc., what is the size of the audience that you want to be seeing? So I have things where there's maybe 30 or 40,000 people in the audience, and then there's some retargeting stuff where there's just a couple of thousands. What is the size of audience that people should try to get to?
Yeah, there's no one size fits all, of course. So it kind of depends on your budget. It depends on your ICP. It depends on what your goals are. So, if you're running lead gen campaigns, you kind of need, and you're running it on a cold audience, you need a large audience. You need, I don't know, 15K, 20K, up to maybe 80K would be okay. You want to have a large enough audience that you can kind of play around with, and you can, it gives the auction enough opportunity for you to say, I'm not going to bid. I don't have to bid that high, right? So if think about there's 50,000 people. If you're targeting, I don't know, US and Europe, and your audience is kind of broad. Let's say you're targeting all of the IT people in large companies in the United States. So you're going to have
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. And so you can, create all these sort of sub segments and sub, people like that have, this skill or that skill or this interest, whatever. You can create these kind of sub segments there. You can split it up by, I don't know, industry or whatever you want. And then you can test it out. But basically what that allows you to do is actually bid much, much lower than the recommended bid. Because, if you're spending $100 a day or $200 a day on a campaign and clicks are costing you, I don't know, $15, let's say, you don't actually need a lot of people. If your CTR is decent, your reach is going to be relatively small, and you don't need that many people from the audience to see it. And so that way you can be kind of, you can kind of stand back and be like, you know what, I don't have to bid that aggressively. And there's a lot of people here. So you kind of have to think about where are you in the market? Are you, are you a big fish in a small pond, or are you a small fish in a big pond? And if you're a small fish in a big pond, you can use that to your advantage. And that, hey, I don't have a lot of money to spend here, so I'm going to actually, I'm going to build a kind of broad audience. And as long as anybody who would come in from this audience I'm interested in talking to, I can kind of load. And that's good for performance. It's not necessarily good for awareness. For awareness, you want to get a relatively high frequency. You want to get to 4 or 5 or 6 in a month, or even in a week, if you're trying to build awareness. And then it actually makes sense to make your audience a little bit smaller so that you are hitting the same people more. So you just kind of have to think about this stuff. It's kind of advanced stuff. You don't necessarily have to think about this stuff if you're, if you're just thinking about performance. But the longer I'm in it, the more I think about this stuff.
Yeah, it's I noted make a really big audience and then try to do a really low bid on the average cost per click, and then you say, give me what you got at this price at some point.
Yeah, if you can do that, if you have a decent audience and a higher than average CTR. If you can get a CTR that's upwards of 0.8 or even 1, you can be super, super aggressive with bidding lowering your bid. Absolutely.
0.1, I need to remember. I need to go check our ads to see how many of them live up to that. As we're stopping, getting to the end here. Yeah, go ahead, Gabriel. I can't get enough of these advices.
Just as a general health check, I mean, you can check how much are you spending on, your cost per click? And, you might say, hey, is this okay? Is this not okay? Or you might be asking yourself, well, things used to be working better. The cost per click is increasing. What can I do now to get it down? And is there room for me to get it down? So you don't need necessarily, sometimes there are advantages to actually, paying a little bit more. If you're paying a little bit more, think about you're getting kind of a premium there. It means that you're showing up more often. It means that you're winning more auctions.
Yeah.
One other thing to take into consideration: are you spending your budget? If you're not spending your budget, right? If you can spend $100 a day, if you can spend $500 a day, and you're not, you should probably increase your bid. You should probably be spending more. But if you're running out your budgets, if it's 3 p.m. in Europe and it's morning in the United States, and you're targeting the United States, and you've run out your budget by 6 p.m. and you haven't even barely reached the West Coast, you can probably reduce your budgets. You can probably reduce your bids, and you can probably increase your budgets if you want.
Cool. Just to round it off here, is there any kind of algorithmic or auction things right now that is working super well and it's going to destroy your business if people hear about it, but you want to tell it anyway? Like typically there's some kind of medium or ad format or something like that is extra good at the present time.
Wow. Good question.
I felt like conversation ads were there 1 or 2 years ago, and then the EU deemed them illegally, and then that tactic kind of fell out.
So any new ad format is going to have an advantage if it's good. If you can kind of get it to work early on, there's a very good chance that you'll be able to get it at a premium. So the thing with the in-mails at first is that they were going for really, really cheap because inventory was cheap. Not a lot of people had adopted them yet, and not everybody really knows how to get them to work. And there's still kind of an advantage there, but you really have to. People know what they are now. You can't. It's like pop-ups. Remember pop-up ads?
Yeah.
At first, they were great because people weren't used to them, or retargeting, like the early days of display retargeting. Early days worked really well because people were like, wow, these guys are everywhere. And they're like, oh, I get it now. You're just following me because I was on your website. People know. Yeah. People know. The secret is out. I don't think there are any secret. I think that's, just be on top of new formats, be willing to test them out, spend some money there to see if maybe you can find an edge there. But no, I don't really see, like I said, I would say 9 times out of 10, what we're doing is lead gen form on a single image. So it's pretty basic. And it really depends, from industry to industry, company to company. But if you can, like I said, if you can make people laugh, you've won. So humor is undervalued and underappreciated in B2B. If you can use humor, use humor. If you can't, I would say that the secret weapon really that most B2B marketers don't have and should have is creative. And it doesn't necessarily mean having a fancy banner. It doesn't necessarily mean having a $10,000 video. It means think about your audience, think about what will make them think, laugh, care, or whatever, to just consider what you're talking about for a second. And you'll probably do better than just whatever you were going to do anyway, which is probably just very, very generic and bland. Sometimes that works, but if you really want to stand out, you kind of have to. Oh, and one other thing, super important, people don't do enough of this, be consistent. People, us as marketers, we have a lot of ideas. We're always kind of coming up with another idea, but people, if you can be consistent, not necessarily with the same ad or the same creative, but with the same theme, the same colors, the brand, if you can kind of create a theme of ads that you can run long term, and I'm talking, think marathon, think like a year, think 2 years, think about TV ads that work with you. They use the same presenter, the same format, and the same theme, but they'll change the scenario. One day they're at, the park, and then the next day they're. But it works on you because you're like, oh, I know that. I'm familiar with that. And then after the 3rd or 4th time you've seen it, you're like, I know that, but what is it? Hold on, I keep seeing this ad. Hold on, I'm going to see. Is this
It
meant
makes a
for
lot of
me?
sense, Gabriel. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff, honestly, way more than the ad formats, way more than, it's like, get in front of the right people and think about the message stuff. Think about the consistency stuff. Think about, what are they actually hearing from you, and do they care? Can you get them to give a damn for a second? And if you do that, you're fine. And nobody will care about the measurement. You'll be seeing the dollars coming in, and they'll be telling your SDRs, oh yeah, we keep seeing your ads all the time. They make me laugh. They're funny. And you won't need to prove it so hard.
Wonderful. I got a few good ideas right there. Let's stop now, Gabriel. If people want to talk more with you or want to listen to Remotion and what you can do for them in terms of LinkedIn, what should they do?
So number one, you can check out our website. It's remotion.io. Or you can go to our LinkedIn page, so Remotion on LinkedIn, or my page on LinkedIn, which is Gabriel Ehrlich. Yeah, I'd love to hear from anybody. If anybody has any questions, please reach out. I'm super generous with my time. I'm always happy to talk shop.
Wonderful. See you. Thank you for now, Gabriel.